We learned a lot about selling over the course of these last 4 or 5 years in particular, because you can't go from nothing to, multi six figures if you don't know how to sell. Like and a lot of us have that goal or millions or more, whatever it is your goal is. But if you don't know how to sell or are scared to sell, it's going to be really hard.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Goings on the Record, our podcast.
We're looking forward to talking to you today, all things sales. So if you're somebody who's trying to make some money, you have a business idea, you're trying to provide a service, and you're just trying to figure out how do you sell it, we're going to talk about all those things today. I think this is an important topic because if you don't sell, you're going to go broke.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's just the fact of it. And it's weird. I don't know your experience like with sales, how it's taught to you, but for me, in my space, education, like people don't like to sell anything. It's just really weird. But I'm like, how do you expect to make money? But I know you come into corporate, so y'all have a different mentality on that.
Definitely, because like I shared in our previous episode, I got my first start in my career on the individual lines side of insurance. And essentially what I was doing was working with two reps or CFPs that were selling life insurance. And so I got a very early introduction into the corporate selling from an insurance perspective, phoning, meetings, networking, all of that, all the things. So.
Yeah. And of course, in higher education, they don't teach you nothing about selling, none of that stuff. Like this all is something you had to figure out along the way. But I've always had something I've been selling. Used to be a private. You used to have students that I gave private music lessons to. You got to sell. You always providing the service. So I think I always had the skill. It was just a matter of figuring out what was the right lane for me to use the skill in. But we learned a lot about selling over the course of these last 4 or 5 years in particular, because you can't go from nothing to, multi six figures if you don't know how to sell. Like and a lot of us have that goal or millions or more, whatever it is your goal is. But if you don't know how to sell or are scared to sell, it's going to be really hard. But I'm curious for Renee, right? So before Renee came on, I did all sales calls, right? And, I'm always interested. I get your thoughts about what was your experience like when you first had to start selling for Done Dissertation, and like what was the thought process about sales, even because you're not necessarily in the industry already. So like what was that experience like trying to sell?
I was so nervous. I remember my first sales call or consultation with a client, and this is just me in general, regardless whether it's Done Dissertation or not. I want to know everything, and I want to know everything now.
Right now. Right now.
And my old boss at my old job, he used to say to me, Renee, I got 30 years on you in the industry, and I don't know everything. You're never going to know everything. But it's definitely a journey. And so I definitely felt a little bit as a fish out of water coming from my previous job where I didn't know everything, but I knew a lot.
Yeah.
And I felt very confident on a phone call that I could answer questions. Coming over now to Done Dissertation, while I had been working in the background doing things, when it comes to the dissertation process and the actual application, if I have someone ask me a question, I want to be able to adequately answer it or provide some feedback. And so being someone that has not gone through the process, I do not have a doctorate, I was a little scared. I was a little bit scared. But I'm a people person, and I love talking with folks. I love hearing about, things that they've experienced. And so I had to draw on what was going to be natural for me and really just approached it as I'm having a conversation with someone. We definitely are a team in this business and life in general. And so basically I was just like, if there's a technical question that I feel like would be better suited for the expert here, then, we could pivot that way. And so it took some of the pressure off on me feeling like I got to be able to know everything, because there's no way I am. And definitely because dissertations are not my area of expertise.
But this is what I knew. I just knew Renee. I'm a people person, but Renee is really a people person. I said that she's always be a better salesperson than I will be, even though she didn't believe it. But I knew. You just know. And so I think for me, when I was doing sales, because I'm an expert on what I was selling, when people would ask questions, I felt inclined to almost coach them on the sales call. And so this is my advice for people who are doing sales, particularly if you have really a lot of expertise on the topic and people might pose a question like, hey, how do I think through this? Like, look, you got to remember and tell the client, like, on this call is to make a decision whether this service is the best fit for you, not for me to coach. Because that's why I wanted Renee to take over too, because I feel like I was just coaching, and then they were getting all this information almost like by the time they ended the sales call, they had all their questions answered, and there was no need for the service anymore almost in some cases. So I feel like I lost a lot of sales that way. So I was happy to have Renee come on and take over the sales. I know you're apprehensive, like, I don't know anything about dissertation. I said, it doesn't matter. The program's already dope. It sells itself. It's just a matter of making sure that the client, knows that this is the best fit for them.
Yeah. And I think when you think about any industry and you think about, a sales force, you've got some guys like on the corporate side, they don't know all the ins and outs of whatever product they're selling. They're not the ones that have created it or work with it on a day-to-day basis. You just have to be able to have some knowledge about what it does, how it can help the population that you're looking to serve, and be able to have a plan to get that person more information should they need it as they're going through their decision-making process. So I always approach consultations and sales calls is that, look, as a co-owner of Done Dissertation, I know we have a phenomenal program that has been helping many of our doc students that enroll get to where they need to be. It's not the best fit for everyone. My goal at the end of every sales call or consultation is to provide the information for that person to make the best decision for themselves. And if it gets a little bit technical in nature for them to be able to do that, then I call in the expert. Other than that, it's just me and that person on the phone talking about the program and how it could potentially fit into what they need.
Yeah. And then when you're thinking about sales, the thing you got to become comfortable with is people saying no. Oh, yeah. So that's a big piece for a lot of folks. Don't get started because they're scared of no. But I promise you're going to get a lot of no's. It becomes a matter of numbers. Like, how many people do you need to get a yes? That's the goal, I think, for me at first. We're trying to figure out how many people do I need to talk to in order for me to get the first yes. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I first started trying to sell our group coaching program, I remember I was doing these free webinars for folks, free trainings. People come on, and then the goal at the end of the webinar was to book a sales call to talk about the program. And I think it took me like 10 people to get to my first sale. So that gave me like a 10% conversion rate. So now, once you know that, now you just know your numbers. It's a matter of getting in front of all those people to sell to. But how did you handle when people say no? I'm curious. What did you do, or how did you think about it when people were like, "No, I'm not interested"?
Well, I think you have different branches of a no in a sense. Yeah. If you think about like a roadmap, you have some folks where it's just like, no, this isn't what I'm looking for, and that's okay. They can get help that they need somewhere else. But I think there are also some other branches of no. No, this is not a good time. Yep. Okay, so that's another conversation. So, hey, we're going to keep in touch. We are going to continue to check in with you, blah, blah, blah. Because there's definitely a cycle in terms of when someone gets the information that they need and when they make a decision. Everybody has different circumstances. And so sometimes the timing is just not right. Yeah. So it's no, this isn't a good fit for me. No, the timing isn't right. Maybe it is, no, I'm not ready to make that investment at this time. Yeah. Okay, so that can change in weeks, months. And so, I remember even just from a consumer perspective, when you were getting ready to enroll in Jasmine's program.
Yeah, for sure.
When it came time to make a decision as to whether he was going to enroll in the program, he was just like, I'm not ready to make that financial investment. Yeah. But then I think like a week or so later, you were awarded a contract.
It was like the next day.
Yeah.
It happened to be. The next day I got the contract. I was like, oh, maybe this is a sign I should go back and say, yeah, I'm going to join that program.
So it was a no literally on one day and a yes literally the day after.
Yeah.
So there's different ways. At the end of the day, Ramon was saying, you got to be able to sit comfortable in answering no. If everybody said yes, everybody is not a good fit. The timing is not right. And ultimately, we're trying to help people. That's our goal at the end of the day. And so I don't want to say pressuring, but having someone say yes because it feels good, enjoying when the time might not be right, or sacrifice things financially that they shouldn't, or just do it because it doesn't fit, but they're just doing it. That's not the ideal person that we want anyway. Yeah. You definitely have to be able to hear no. But there's different types of no's, and knowing how to respond to that, I think, is key.
Yeah, and I think, people do have a journey. Like, we've had people who maybe have reached out 2 years ago and the timing wasn't right. Whether they weren't there, financially, or whether they weren't there mentally, emotionally, whatever it was, and then they come back. And I think with sales, it's like if you stay in the game long enough, you win. And so us being consistent, being in front of people says, oh, I can come back to them. And people come back because they know, like, hey, I need the help and I haven't been able to do it on my own. And so that's another piece to consider in sales. Some people really believe that they can do it on their own. And I commend that. If I can give you this free content and you can figure it out yourself, please go ahead and do that. But there are going to be some people who need more help and need more assistance. And that's when, as a salesperson, you come in and really provide a solution. And I think for me, I had to get out of the idea of like selling the technical aspects of the program, but like selling what's the result as at the end of the day. Because we have some clients who literally their promotions have depended on earning their doctorate. So now I'm not going to sell you the program. I'm going to sell you the end result of you earning that promotion. That's the sale. And I think a lot of us get caught up with just selling the actual technical piece, but like people want something at the end of this. And I guess our job is to figure out what it is.
Yeah, definitely. I know for me too, you have to kind of put your mind or your brain in the person that you're speaking to. So, I mean, I am a consumer that I literally like to make a list. I like to make a
list
spreadsheet.
For everything. A spreadsheet
pros,
for everything.
Cons. Here's how much it's going to cost me. Here's the value it's going to bring. Yeah. What's my ROI? How can I recapture those funds? How long is it going to take me to recapture those funds? I mean, I literally do all that. I mean, whereas you're more like, once he's made the decision,
once I want it, I'm going to get it.
He's going to go.
Yeah, I don't have time for all that.
I'm the one that has to noodle on it a little bit. And so because I am like that, I always like to give that same respect and courtesy to, our potential clients. So when I'm on a sales call, I'm not trying to pressure them to make a decision. I'm literally just trying to give them the information so that they can make a decision and give them the time and space to do so. And I think it's important what you said. It's really almost kind of like hearkening back to my insurance day, law of large numbers. The more reps you get in, the more people you talk to. And even though you might hear a lot of no's, some folks are going through their decision-making journey. And for some folks, it's years.
Yeah.
If you stay consistent, you stay out there, as the years or the time goes on, not only are you going to be talking to new people, but those old people that you talked to years ago have come around in their cycle and realize, hey, I really do need that service. They're coming back. And that's what we're starting to experience a lot of. Or people that we had calls with
2021
years ago that said no. And now the answer is yes, because they had to go through their own journey in making that decision.
And then those people, they're quick to, here's my credit card. Where do I sign up? It's not even a hassle to even say, are you going to pay? Are you going to join? No, it's like, all right, I've suffered enough. The pain is bad enough. Let me get this solution and get what I need. Yeah,
I'm the person that if there's a resource, I'm going to use all the free before I realize, hey, I can't do this with free. Yeah. I need to make an investment. And so, for some people, it's right on, depending on where they are in their journey and how bad the pain is. And for some folks, it takes years. Yeah. And so, yeah.
And there's a cadence to it. I think there's a lot of books on sales, right? And there's some good ones. One that I really liked was Brian Tracy. It was a sales book. I just can't remember the title. I'll find it and put it in the description. But in the sales book, he talked about doing 100 reach outs. Had I not been selling before or reading the book, that book wouldn't have made sense to me. So I think like when we think about sales, it's like I need to go do it first, get some experience, and then come back and try to learn a system or a setup. Because otherwise you're just trying to, a lot of people get stuck in like reading these books and like watching all these videos on sales, but don't go sell anything. And it makes absolutely no sense. So I think I've learned so much about sales just by doing it more so than anything.
And it really is like an exercise. So what I would advise doing and what we do is record all of your sales calls. Yes, record
all your sales calls.
And you can it starts to really become something you can study. You can study, cues. You can study body language. Yep. You can study just how you're kind of saying different things and how folks are reacting. You can see the sales calls where you feel like you didn't really do that great of a job versus you feel like you did a great job, and really pull on those things that you felt really worked for you, and really start to put that as part of, what your signature when you're,
Yeah.
talking with somebody.
Yeah, it's nice to see all the winners. Then you know your metrics too when you're recording all of them. And now, record your sales calls and then transcribe them. Like use like Otter AI or Rev.com. Do something to transcribe them. That way you have the transcription. So now even if you had to bring on someone else to sell, you kind of have already like, here's how I typically script out sales calls, or here's the type of phrasing that worked, or also you hear back from the client, what did they need? So now you can take that information and it goes into your marketing materials. Like, hey, my pain was X, Y, and Z. Now you can directly say that because you heard it from a client. It makes marketing so much easier too.
I think it's really important too to just be authentic.
Yeah.
And to be authentic and really have a passion behind what you're doing. That's what I feel like I say all the time makes it so easy for me, is because I truly believe in our programs, and I'm seeing how it's literally changing folks' lives. And so I do have a passion behind it. I know we can help folks, and having that passion and authenticity when, speaking with someone, I think that does come across. And so I think that's also super important. Another thing I think is super important is to have some goals.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a person that he gets on me all the time because I'm always like, well, what's the plan?
Yeah.
What's the plan?
Oh gosh, what's the plan? That's our favorite phrase. What's the plan?
I need a plan. I don't like to feel like I'm just all over. I'm not saying to procrastinate getting out there, hitting the ground running and having some sales calls and doing some reach outs. But what I am saying is take some time, take a little bit of time to just write out kind of, okay, what is my goal in terms of revenue, and how many sales calls do I need to make? How many sales do I need? And then how many sales calls do I need to make to get there? That way you have a plan and you're not just kind of arbitrarily going through it.
Right.
It's also going to feel really rewarding when you're able to hit those certain metrics. And it's like, okay, all of this is not for anything. If you're super introverted and, you're not really liking the sales calls or whatever, as you start to get more reps in and you start to get some sales, you actually are seeing yourself kind of matriculate towards your goal. So I do think it's important to have, a goal in mind.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you definitely want goals. And I would also say a lot of times we set our goals too low. So sometimes like project a little bit further out than what you think you can do and then see what happens. If your goal is 10 sales, let's say in a quarter, maybe you say, I'll try 15, maybe is really my goal, and see where you land. Because what will likely happen, you'll be somewhere in between 10 and 15, most likely. And so I'm a firm believer, wherever you set your goal, set it a little bit higher, and then you'll surprise yourself, I think, what I've learned from doing sales so far. But sales, you gotta sell the stuff that you have. Like, don't feel ashamed about it. People will be like, oh, why do you keep posting about that? Or why do you keep talking about that? Like, look, if I don't talk about it, nobody's buying what I got. So you gotta be willing to talk about it over and over and over again. I found that has been helpful. Being more consistent and like talking about what you have to offer is really helpful. I'm even thinking about what we just had happen. We had been on a break from selling kind of because our program had filled up. And then we just sent a text message out to our list yesterday. That generated like 2 sales calls from that just by saying, hey, we got some openings. And so being willing to have your offer available for folks, I think is the key to selling. If you don't offer it, you're not getting it.
Mm-hmm. I think you also need to think about sales, maybe not necessarily, speaking of that, not in an organic phoning or direct reach outs or cold calls, but the power of networking.
Yeah.
And utilizing, your network and just kind of putting feelers out and seeing, where there's interest and utilizing that. That's another way. And that's another way, just being in higher education.
Yeah.
Dr. Goings is able to reach a lot of folks where that's not my network necessarily. So
yeah, if you're trying to sell something, I would just say the first strategy, if you were trying to make money, like if you wanted to make your first sale today, you have a cell phone of like a couple hundred people. Somebody on your cell phone is your ideal client or knows somebody who's your ideal client. So reach out to everybody and say, hey, I got this service. I'm doing this. Do you know somebody? Are you that person? Can you help me out? And then you'd be surprised. There'd be a lot of people. Because initially our sales started from when I was starting out was just from my immediate network. I found some Facebook communities where I knew people who ran the Facebook communities. They said, oh yeah, that'll be great. Do a webinar for our community. And that got me sales just from that relationship. And so I think just starting out with your current network and then you'll expand from there. Because now we get referrals from referrals from referrals. It's interesting. Like we can't trace back to the original source of who sent the person our way.
The ripple is going further and further out. I think too, we would be doing folks a disservice if we didn't talk about the power of the follow-up.
Oh man.
It's so easy to, what do they call it? Post and pray, email and pray, call and pray, and leave a voicemail. And it's just like, oh, I never heard back. Because you don't want to be that person, right? You don't want to be that nagging person. You got to be that person. But at the end of the day, folks are busy and they need multiple nudges. I know I do. People send me texts all the time and I start typing it and then my daughter comes in and I am now have to focus my attention and I'm mid-text and I didn't respond. And unless I come back to that text thread, it's gone out of my head.
Yeah.
And so I think the power of the follow-up is super important. And it should feel organic and be true to kind of who you are. So maybe it's a voice message. Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's a DM. Maybe, I don't know, it's tagging somebody in a post. Whatever way it feels good for you, definitely continue to follow up with folks. It's not just a one and done thing. You'll exhaust your list way too fast.
Yeah, you got to follow. Oh, man. I love follow up. That's where you make your money is the follow up, because people are gonna say no or they're gonna ghost you at times, and like you said, it's not because they wanted to, just stuff happens. And so I followed up with people in the DMs. Sometimes I might do it if you're looking for like creative ways to do it. You can follow it via like a voice message, like a voice note. But also I'll do videos, and so I'll record videos and send personal videos to the people, and sometimes those get a better response than anything else I would do to reach out. Some folks they've been people I wanted to reach out to or who express interest in our program may have been going live on their social media, and I happen to see it. And so I'll jump on their live and like just put a comment and chat with them. And then it'll trigger their memory like, oh, I forgot I need to hit up Dr. Goins about X, Y, and Z. And so sometimes you just got to be creative because, they're already warm. So once you have the sales call, once they know who you are, they're warm. You don't want that, as best as you can help, but you don't want them to go ice cold on you. So, just keep tabs on them. And this is why in terms of sales, and we'll talk with Carrie on another episode, it's about having your marketing together in terms of keeping in contact with people, because that will, lead to the sale eventually.
You got to tell them that story. Paraphrase it. The story of
the
that
real
TikTok.
estate. Yeah, I saw this is TikTok, right? Of this real estate agent, and he was talking about the power to follow up, and he's a real estate agent in New York City, and he had a listing. It was for an apartment. It was like for $8.3 million. He found somebody who wanted to buy it, and they were just like, and they had to show proof of funds, and he gave him this letter with proof of funds. He was like, okay, well, I need to meet and sign paperwork. And the guy would like ghosted him for like 8 months. He's following up. And then he said, randomly, the guy sends a check in for like $800,000 to put a deposit down on the house. He's like, oh, okay, we're in escrow. We're going to sell it. Then the guy goes ghost again for like another 6 months, and he's following up. And then one day the guy emails him like, hey, I'm busy, but I'm in France right now. And the real estate agent says, well, oh, okay, well, I'll meet you tonight. I'll meet you tomorrow. I'm in France as well. And even though this guy was actually in New York City at the time. So and the guy was like, all right, bet, meet me tomorrow. He takes a flight from New York City to France to meet with this guy, gets ghosted a little bit again, and then randomly, like 1 o'clock in the morning, he says the guy shows up. They sign some paperwork. They have a good time. They get drunk, and then he goes back and gets ghosted again. He following up, and then the guy finally comes back to New York City and pays for the house. Little did the real estate agent know this guy was a billionaire, and literally to him, $8.3 million was like a drop in the bucket.
It was not even
worth the follow up.
I think he kind of liked seeing this guy. He wanted to kind of test him to see, is he going to just kind of fall off, or is he going to follow up? And he literally followed up with this jillionaire guy. Yeah. For months and months and months and months and months. And so that deal that seemed so small to the billionaire, but so big to the agent, created a really cool working relationship, and they've done so much more in business together. And so he sent me that TikTok. He was like, this is the power of the follow-up. Don't give up.
Once I saw that, I'm like, I already follow people, so I'm like on that. But that really is like, I got to keep following people, because you just never know. People got stuff going on, and That one follow might be the difference. I mean, you try to make a sale, you got to follow up with people. Don't feel bad. I don't feel bad about it at all. Until someone says, no, don't follow up with me. Once you tell me that, cool, I'll leave you alone. But if you don't, and if someone doesn't tell you no, then that gives you, it's still opening. So I would continuously to stay in touch with people. I think that has been our success, is like the follow up and staying in front of people. Mm-hmm. And what are some last things as we wrap up that you would want to give advice for people who are in sales, trying to figure out how to sell their product, like anything you've learned so far?
I feel like I've kind of already said it. For me, this is just me personally, and how I present myself is just being authentic. You know, it's okay to have goals in terms of, you know, sales and revenue, and of course the calls and the networking and everything that's going to take to drive it. But ultimately, the way I approach every consultation and a call is, I'm here in this moment with you, whoever that is.
Yeah.
And I want to hear about your journey. I want to hear about your needs. I want to hear about everything that you've been going through. I want to share a little bit. Yep. I want to share about our program. I want to give you every single piece of information that I would want to know as a consumer, because, again, I belabor all that stuff.
Yeah.
I want to give you all of that so you can make the best and most informed decision for yourself. And then I keep it moving.
Yeah, and I think for me, in terms of sales, it's just being willing to constantly sell. Like, there's nothing more powerful than that. A lot of folks don't do well because they're afraid to sell. And in particularly, I know for any faculty or watch, I know how it goes. Hire will make you feel like this kind of like crazy mindset around monetizing your work or whatever it is, and so you're scared to sell yourself, and you got to be able to and willing to sell. And then also too, for most of y'all, probably your prices are too low, honestly. And we went through this journey, and we'll talk about that maybe another episode on pricing and those types of things. But being confident on those sales calls, because if you're not confident, folks are not going to trust what you have to say. And confidence also comes when you start talking about the cost of whatever is your service, your fee. Be confident in that, because if you know the value, the true value it is to someone, like, don't worry about the cost. Like, I had to learn that when I'm selling, the consumer has to make the decision about the cost, not me. Like, I know what the service provides, I know the value it provides, and this is the cost for that value. And don't check other people's pocketbooks and wallets, because you'd be surprised. The people that you don't think got it, they may not, but they'll figure out a way to get it. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a matter of staying in front of people, and then, you know, always be confident in your sales. And I think that's it for sales. And if you all have more questions, feel free to drop us in the comments, shoot us a DM to let us know, because we want to do more videos targeted to what you all might need. So if you have particular questions about sales, let us know, and we'll do smaller videos to kind of just capture and go at that particular question. But again, thank you all so much for tuning in to Goings on the Record.
Episode 2.
Episode 2. We're out.